Good. Hello, I'm Matthias Patzak, based out of Munich, Germany. I'm an enterprise strategist with AWS. It's an artificial, not self-explaining title. We are a small team of former leaders from commercial and public sector organizations who have led transformation themselves. So I was CTO of AutoScout24, Europe's leading marketplaces for used cars. And as enterprise strategists, we share with current AWS customers how we have led transformations. And these customers then share with us their current thinking about their transformation, their new ways of working. And sometimes we also do reviews, and we have a look at the documents that they share with us. And sometimes it looks a bit strange. It looks more like a simple sabotage manual. But we wouldn't sabotage our own organization, wouldn't we? But whom of you was part of an organization where I thought, oh, this is a bit strange, this is weird? Several. In the next 45 minutes or so, I'm sharing some patterns that we observe in organizations, how we believe organizations sabotaging their own transformation. And the first, what we observe is outdated principles. These are Henry Fayol and Lyndon Irwin. Henry Fayol was a mining engineer in the early 20th century, and Lyndon Irwin was a management consultant. So yes, we already had management consultants 100 years ago. And they both wrote books about how to set up and run organizations. And these are some of the principles that they came up with. So one is divide work to encourage specialization, or authority. From their perspective, authority was really important. The right to give orders and the power to require obedience. Actually, not all of the principles they have written about what we perceive nowadays in the 21st century as being wrong. So they also talked about direction would be important. It is important that employees are empowered to follow an initiative, to have certain objectives, and to have continuity in your organization. Unfortunately, and this is a quote from the CEO of Netflix, still management paradigms from high volume, low error manufacturing have come to dominate business organizational practices. So I'm a German, and in Germany 26% of the GDP is based on manufacturing. In the UK and France it's more about 60%, in the US is similar. But still, too many organizations and even manufacturing organizations apply these principles that were made for a totally different type of work in the organization. And this is why, in a recent survey from Accenture, 94% of CEOs said that their operating model put their growth and performance at risk. It's not the people, it's not the culture, but it's the operating model. And it should be the other way around. Your operating model should be an enabler for success and innovation. What we also observe when customers want to transform the organization is that they still rely on a siloed organization. Let's have a look. So these are different functions in an organization: a design department, a marketing department, a sales department. And when these people want to collaborate and co-create, usually they have to go up the hierarchy and they have to ask the team lead about allowance to work together with a different department. The team lead has to ask the department lead up to the biggest boss in the company. And this is a structure that is set up for control. But actually, we don't want and we don't need control. What we actually want is an operational system that optimizes for delivering business value and innovation to the customers, and that optimizes for flow at the same time. And this is why modern organizations are based on cross-functional teams. And these teams at Amazon, we call these 2 pizza teams, are small and nimble, but they include all skills and all necessary functions to deliver value at scale. And the core principle behind is it wouldn't so easy if a person in an organization needs help from another person. You can just reach out to this person, go to the next office, the next floor, the next building, and ask for help. But what is reality? Reality is that more people are involved or necessary to have a say in it. And these are just 8 people. But 8 people mean 28 connections, 28 communication channels, 28 relationships that you have to maintain. And with more and more people involved in a discussion, in a decision, as long as it takes. And this is the main issue, because if too many people are involved in the decision-making project, then it's not clear who is really in charge. And at Amazon, we have this concept of a single-threaded leader, which I'm going to talk about later a bit. And this slows down organizations, and this slows down transformations. And at Amazon, we believe that communication is a sign of dysfunction. Because when people need to communicate, it means people aren't working together in a close, organic way. And Jeff Bezos said, we should be trying to figure out a way for teams to communicate less with each other, not more. And this is how we design organization. Small 2-pizza teams that are enabled to drive value for their customers. What we also observe is wrong resource allocation. And the resource allocation is clear because it's not clear where to go. And what these organizations are missing is guidance. And what gives guidance and what gives orientation is a map. And in the next couple of minutes, I'm using this 2x2 matrix, finally leading into Wardley maps, which is a way to map out value streams and resource allocation in your organization. And it has 2 dimensions. One is predictability, low and high predictability, and autonomy. And this is an example from one of my teammates, the former CEO of McDonald's, and he said, at McDonald's, when you're cooking fries, they have to look like the same in Mumbai as they do in Munich. So you want to have a high predictable outcome, so you provide less autonomy to the people delivering this outcome. When you have to build a new outlet, it's less predictable, so you provide more autonomy. If you're implementing an ERP system, there you have a lot of uncertainty involved. You need to provide more and more autonomy, and even if you're becoming and going in the areas of innovations, you need to provide the teams a lot of autonomy to being able to navigate this uncertainty. And actually, you can divide this map in 4 areas. The first area is Genesis. This is the area where true innovation happens. If you invented something new, then someone is creating a custom-built solution for it. If enough organizations, companies build custom-built solutions for certain problems, someone is definitely going to make a product out of it. And finally, some of the products become utilities. And one example for it is cloud computing. So computing started in the 1950s as an innovation, but it became a product with rack servers. And I bought thousands of these rack servers. But finally, and I did my cloud transformation as a customer in 2014, rack servers became a utility with Amazon EC2. And the same is true with software. When I started my career, we were installing software not based on floppy disk. And even these products became a utility. And using more. Using more of the products and utilities helps you to decomplexify your infrastructure and organization. This is what Werner Vogels was talking about in his keynote earlier. And this helps you to enable more innovation and custom-built solutions. And this is the purpose of the many AWS services, to provide you products and utilities to decomplexify your organization and allocate resources in the area of true competitive advantage in your organization. What also blocks, sabotage innovation is inertia in your organization. Let's come back to this example. And you have in your organization inertia between product and utility. And this usually happens in a cloud transformation when you ask your very experienced, specialized people in your organization to learn new products, new Amazon services. So imagine someone who has 20 or 30 years experience in an industry with a certain product, a database or a network product, and you ask them to learn new things, new Amazon services. From their perspective, it feels like you're pressing a reset button. You're pressing a reset button on all of their knowledge and all of their skills. Actually, this is not true. For sure, they have to learn some new things. So if you've been an Oracle administrator, now you have to learn about how is RDS, Aurora, or DynamoDB working. But you don't press a reset button on all of the experience. And if you make this move from on-premise to the cloud, you have to manage this change. And from a reskilling and upskilling perspective, what I always recommend is to start with emphasizing what people don't have to learn new, and this is the experience on architect large systems. So don't start with trainings on how do you configure and start a database in the console, but maybe start with a well-architectured framework and explain about how to set up complicated systems at scale in Amazon, because then you double down on the experience and you give your people the confidence that they are still relevant and still needed also in the future. And then based on this knowledge, start to really train on the foundations of the console services. What also sabotages many transformation is forgotten differentiators. And differentiator means what makes you you. What is your differentiator to other companies, other organizations in your industry? And this is Wardley map. On the horizontal dimension, you still have predictability with Genesis, custom build, product, and utility areas. But now on the vertical dimension, we have visibility, meaning how visible is something to the customers. Items on the top of the Wardley maps are close and very visible to your customer. And this example is about paying bills. So you have a bank and you have a personal banking customer in the 1990s, and then you want to pay bills. And at this point in time, it was able by going to a branch or pay by phone. And so a bank built an infrastructure. And we see they used some custom built solution, they used some products, and they used also some utility services, like low speed WAN or PSTN. But complexity hit this business model. And so in the 2010s, personal banking customer could also pay by apps, pay by web. And so the banks had to build more value streams and more infrastructure in their organization. And now let's have a look how digital native banks solve the same customer demand. Digital native banks in the 2020s are less complex. What they do compared to the picture before, they use less products, but they use much more utility services. So they decomplexify their operation and their business processes by relying heavily on utility service. And because of this, they can use more of their resources, more of the digital talents in the area of custom-built solution and innovation. And this is why they usually provide better usability from the business process perspective and from the front-end perspective. And what these organizations do, they maximize the work you don't have to do. So they leverage cloud technologies. They also use and acquire some products. But they are well aware of the danger that over-customized commercial software becomes finally a blocker for your business processes. Most of the projects where I was involved in, we are buying or implementing a commercial off-the-shelf software. At the beginning, it was always said, we are not customizing. We use the software as it is. It never happened. It never happened. It was always a lot of customizing, and it was always a lot of custom code involved. And this slows you down. These organizations don't do it. In the area of products, of commodity processes, they would rather use and follow the process that is predefined in the software. And then they build. And this is why these organizations are so successful. One reason is also that by applying cost-effective cloud infrastructure, they have a different investment and budget structure. In traditional organizations, the largest part, 55 up to 80% of the organization's budget, is in the area of products and utilities. And there's no much budget left for innovation and building custom-built solutions. This organization, like the example of the digital native bank, they have a different budget structure. They have more budget available in the area of genesis, of innovation and custom-built solutions. What also blocks transformation is over-efficiency. Efficiency is important, but if efficiency is your main objective, you're not effective and you're not fast. And this is why the question is your organization optimizing for speed, or is it optimizing for efficiency? And actually most organizations, and this is true for Amazon as well, you have to act on both. You need to be efficient, cost efficient, but you need also to be fast. In the area of products and utilities, you optimized cost. There you want to be cost efficient and you want to reduce variation. And think about our fulfillment centers, our data centers. These are Six Sigma processes. In other area of our businesses, where we want to have custom-built solution or where we want to innovate, organizations have to optimize for speed. And there, speed means you want to reduce cost as well, but the cost of learning. So you want to be able as an organization to iterate very fast and experiment to really drive innovation. And this is why in organization it's totally fine and even necessary to have different ways of working and different operational models. In the area of utilities and products, you want to apply more the thinking of Six Sigma. While in the area of Genesis custom build, you want to apply agile ways of working. And actually, when I joined Amazon, I was really interested and really curious, how is the software development process at Amazon defined? And I was looking for it. Actually, there is not a single one. Think about any operational model, any methodology that you know, Agile, Scrum, Kanban, Prince2. A team at Amazon is definitely using it, plus 57 more that the team themselves came up with because it fits their need. And actually, there are 4 types of different ways of working that you can apply in your organization. In the area of genesis and innovation, it's more like a pioneer. So think about the pioneers who wrote in the Wild West and just try to find a way where people can make a living. They were followed by settlers who actually settled in a valley and then tried to make their living. If they were successful, you had a town builder, and just finally you started to plan your city, the schools, the fire departments, the opera and the cinemas. And this is why you also can have different sourcing models in your organization. In the area of products and utility, it's totally okay that you used more outsourced and procured solutions in more suppliers, because you have less variance, so you can, in some ways, define requirements. In the area of Genesis and custom-built solution, you want to leverage in-house knowledge, people who really understands your business problems, your customer needs, your technology, and people that buy into your organizational purpose. What we also observe is in many organizations, it's more managing than leading. And what do I mean with this? If you look at today's leaders' budget and time, we see that most of the budget spent on running the engine and just a small part is spent on innovation. And the same is true with where do leaders, and maybe it's where managers spend their time. And most of the time is spent in just running the engine, day-to-day business, operations. And it's less spent in hiring, attracting, and developing the talent. And it's not so much spent in co-creating with the rest of the organization the strategy and then driving the execution of the strategy. But tomorrow, in transformed organization, leaders should spend their time differently. Just a small part of the budget should be spent on running the engine, and the largest part should be spent on innovation, and the same is true on the leader's time. You need to be able to dive deep as a leader in your operations and understand customer needs, actual problems in your processes to further develop your organization. But you should spend more time on attracting and developing talent and also retaining talent and really drive and execute your strategy. And we observe two types of organizational pattern when it comes to leaders, teams of leaders or leadership teams. This is a team of leaders. They went to an offsite a week and they came up with a new goal. Our goal is to become customer-centric. And these are leaders out of different functions, different departments. After the offsite, they come back. And what actually happens is each one passes the message into their teams, but translated so that it fits the needs of the departments. And one leader says, we need to cut cost. The next, we should build a new product. The next, we have to reduce the number of products we sell, totally contradicting. And we have to open more stores. And this is why we recommend not having a team of leaders, but a true leadership team. A leadership team that shares the mission, shares the objectives, shares success, shares failure, and sometimes also shares the same office space. So at AutoScout, I shared the same office as a CTO with the VP of product. So what does leadership do? It starts with defining a mission. And this is an artificial mission that I've created with generative AI. We will become a data-enabled organization leveraging our global synergies to achieve world-class customer centricity unmatched by our omni-channel competitors. And this is how many company missions read, but does it really provide guidance and clarity? It does not. And this is a mission that I haven't created, it's Amazon missions. And it says to be Earth's most customer-centric company. And this is what Amazon customers feel every day. We really work backwards from customer needs and try to solve customer solutions. What is also important, that leaders define principles. Principles that describe the culture and the behaviors that you want to have in an organization. And we believe that these principles, the behaviors, are the organizational glue for many companies. And I brought some examples. We believe that we should have integrity when we work with customers and prospects openly, honestly, and sincerely. This was one of the leadership principles from Enron. Who still knows Enron? They definitely didn't follow this principle. Or we should value our employees. We expect to become customers' preferred choice, or we operate within the letter of the law. If you need this type of principles, you have a serious issue in an organization. And these principles, and sometimes you see them in organizations, they remind me more on 10 things I learned in kindergarten. Like Share everything, don't hit people, say sorry when you hurt somebody, put things back where you found them, clean up your own mess, wash your hands before you eat. I brought some examples that I used in my organization at AutoScout when we moved away from a monolith on-premise data centers, Oracle database and Microsoft technologies to microservices, Scala, the only decision I regret, we can discuss later, event-driven architectures, and a true you build it, you run it setup. And one of the principles was actually you build it, you run it. The team, the product development team, is responsible for designing, building, running, and maintaining its products. Fast feedback from live and customers help us to continuously improve. We also had a principle which stated, please be bold. Dear engineer, dear software developer, go into production early. Value monitoring over test. So we said monitoring is the new testing. Please fail fast, but recover and learn. And we optimized for mean time to recover, not mean time between failures. And this is a clear principle that made it clear for everyone in the organization what we are optimizing for and we are not longer optimizing for. But we also said security, compliance, and data privacy is important for us. So we said, yes, please build fast, but build with the least privilege and data privacy in mind. Know your threat model, and if you fail, limit the blast radius. And for us, it was also important, our principle was we are AWS first. We wanted to decomplexify our technology stack, and we wanted to put our resources, our efforts in innovation. And this is why we said we are going to use AWS services over other managed service, over self-hosted open source, and over self-built solutions. And leaders also define guardrails and mechanisms in an organization. Unfortunately, many mechanisms and guardrails lead to bureaucracy. And we believe that organizations should be decomplexified. A mission that was stated earlier this morning in details from Werner, and I really loved this keynote. And you can calculate the bureaucratic mass index in your organization or for your last week. So think about your last week and think about how much of the time of your last week was spent on not customer value generating work, plus waiting for other people or in your organization, and divided by the total work. What we also still see is that organizations hire for skills and not for attitude. I believe actually you have to hire for both, attitude and skills. And we believe that leaders need to raise the cultural bar. With each hire, you need to become a better organization from an attitude perspective. And what you really want to hire is people who are curious. People who every day say, wow, isn't that interesting? You want to hire learners. And this is because technology changes, way of working changes, and customer expectation changes. And 65% of children in preschool today will work in jobs that don't even exist yet. So hire learners in your organization. Unfortunately, when it comes to recruitment, the desire of the recruiting organization is very often different to the new joiner. So organizations want to have a salary that is typically below market. They provide a modest bonus, no equity. They require specific skills for the task of today and not for the job of tomorrow. It should be a cultural fit for the manager. The new joiner should definitely take directions, and they should be flexible on the task. But as a new joiner, if you think about joining a new organization, you have a different desire. So definitely you're hoping for getting salary on top of the market. You want to learn. You expect a great tech stack and tooling. And from my perspective, this is a very, very important aspect if you want to attract digital talent. That you have the right architecture, the right technology in place where you can attract talent. People want to feel ownership, and they want to be inspired by outcomes and the company purpose. And this is a quote by Adrian Cockcroft. He was the former CTO of Netflix, and he was also a VP at Amazon. I saw him at reInvent this year. And he did a conference like this, and he shared how Netflix is working, how Netflix is building microservice architectures at scale. And he was talking about the great culture. And then a Fortune 100 CTO said after the presentation, but hey, we can't copy Netflix because you have all of these superstars engineers and we don't have these people. What was his answer? Yeah, we have them, but we hire them from you and then we get out of the way. Because very often it's not the people, it's the environment and it's the culture. And this is why motivation is so important. And when are people at the peak of their motivation? If we wouldn't do a silent disco today, I would ask the session, the question I would be curious on your answer. Lately at a conference when I asked when are people at the peak of their motivation, the answer was Friday afternoon. And this is a pity. I believe people are at the peak of their motivation the day before or the first day when they join a new organization. They have very high expectations, they're highly motivated, they're looking forward to the new company, the new purpose, their new job. And this is why one management theory says you can't really motivate people, you can just demotivate them. Or as a leader, you should constantly try to remove any blockers and demotivations for these people. And when it comes to retention, again, there are different needs and different desires between an organization and the employee. The organization wants the people to stay in the role. People should take direction. They shouldn't ask for a raise. They should be comfortable with a performance monologue, just the managers talking. And they should reskill in their own time on the weekend. Employees' desire is differently. They expect clarity on the career path and the progression. They want to have autonomy to work on great things. They want to have a real level of market pay. They want to have fairness in the evaluation, and they expect a continuous learning environment where they can grow. And this is Daniel Pink. If I would recommend just a single book on motivation, it's his book. And he says to motivate employees, they need autonomy, so freedom to act. They need mastery, so everyone wants to be proud on what they have achieved and what they are able to do. And people want to have a purpose. And in regards to mastery and retention, it's important that you have a career plan for everyone in the organization. And at Amazon, we have a career path for the technical track, for individual contributors, up to becoming senior VPs and distinguished engineers. Today in Werner's keynote, we had a VP and distinguished engineer from S3 on stage. And this is the same level as the managerial track. And in many organizations I know, the technical track would end somehow at level 6 or level 7, and there would be no progression, no further progression possible. In the later stage of transformations, most of the organizations work together with suppliers, and this is good. In my organization, we said 70% of the software developers should be interns, 30% should be externals, especially in the areas where you could use products and utilities. But if you're further in your transformation, you have different desires. You want to achieve outcomes. What you expect from your supplier is co-located and agile experimental mindset. You want that this supplier helps you to reduce cost through automation, and you expect to get highly skilled mixed tech experts. And obviously you want to pay for results, not for hours, and you want to share some risk. But the traditional suppliers, they still optimize for generating their own revenue. They expect predictable predictable, documented requirements. They want to preserve their margins. For sure, they provide mixed skills, and they're more interested in being paid for time, and they don't want to share any risk. And this is why I recommend, there are many great AWS partners who are in this industry for a long time, and many of them have transformed themselves. But nevertheless, there are also a lot of great consultancies and AWS partners who are non-traditional partners. Have a look at them as well. There are great organizations out there. So, we are coming to an end. If you're on a transformation, there are some do's and don'ts. Don't photocopy someone else's organization. Who is familiar with the Spotify model? Actually, I like it, because when they talked about it in 2014, it was great guidance on how to structure different aspects of your organization. So be inspired, but just don't copy it. Don't overplan or overestimate the pace of change. Be stubborn on the vision, but be flexible on the detail. It always comes different than you think. Don't just rebrand roles and processes. DevOps, it's not just a new role. You cannot just rebrand a certain aspect of your organization. Really lean in what is behind certain principles, what are the new ways of working that you have adopted, and then be really consequent on implement this new way of working. Don't ignore resistance, and double down on change management. Give people time, recognize the fear that people have, invest in the people, and provide psychological safety. And finally, don't delegate change. Delegate your day-to-day business, but don't delegate the change. You want to lead the change, you want to drive the outcome, and you want to be part of the change. Thank you very much. If you have further questions, happy to take them afterwards, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.